This is what the Prime Minister, in a scathing attack, calling out Nigel Farage yesterday. And so we called him a snake oil salesman, and it is a term for a charlatan, a con artist or a fraudster who knowingly sells fraudulent, worthless or deceptive products. So there you go. So this was obviously a scathing attack, and the Prime Minister called out Nigel Farage's politics of grievance.
Yes, during his speech at the Labour Party conference, he questioned whether Reform really want to serve the country, describing Nigel Farage as a snake oil merchant.
Well, our political editor, Christopher Hope, challenged the Prime Minister on some of those assertions. Here are some of the key moments.
Prime Minister, thank you for talking to GBNews. You finished your speech telling your audience to fly those flags. Why has the left been so uncomfortable with a Union Jack or a St George's flag? What's wrong with being patriotic?
There's nothing wrong with being patriotic, and the left has always been patriotic. Look at the Labour government just after the war, rebuilding our country, a founder member of NATO, which obviously has been the most successful military alliance the world has ever known. And we are patriotic today, a patriotic Labour Party, because we love our country. We love our beautiful, tolerant, diverse country, and that's what drives us to not just fix the problems in our country, but to change our country for the better. So I was very glad to see all those flags.
Yes, well, we've been giving them out for GBNews. So we've been the Union flags. Yeah,
I put them on the membership card of the Labour Party.
That's right. So back in 2022,
thousands and thousands of people have got their membership card with a Union Jack on it.
Nothing wrong with that. OK, Nigel Farage has accused you of inciting violence against Reform, putting a target on the backs of people backing Reform, with a Reform rosette. Are you risking inflaming tensions, particularly after the murder of Charlie Kirk?
No, not at all. There is a political fight that has to be had, and it's about the future of our country, because at the next election, the fight will be different to the fight at every other election. It won't be Labour versus the Conservatives. It'll be Labour versus Reform, and that means patriotic national renewal with Labour, where we go forward as the whole of our country, versus the toxic division and decline of Reform, which I think will tear our country apart. I, as Prime Minister, want to serve the whole of my country, my beautiful, tolerant, diverse country that I believe in, whose values I support, and I do not want to see it dragged into division and tearing our country apart. And the politics of grievance, which feeds off the problems rather than fixing the problems. When we are trying to deal with our borders, we're trying to pass the Borders Bill, give more power to law enforcement to deal with the small boats. What does Nigel Farage do? He votes against it. We've got a returns deal with France. What does Nigel Farage do? He says he'd rip it up.
Well, he would do
ID cards to stop people working illegally in our economy. He says he would reverse it. He doesn't want to fix the problem, because if the problem is fixed, his reason to exist goes away. So that's why I call it the politics of grievance.
No mention of ID cards in your speech then. Are you going cool on the idea? Of course, I was there on Friday when you mentioned them.
No, I mentioned them, and they were a major part of my speech on Friday. Today I was making, if you like, a bigger... at the beginning of the summer, I said I don't want just a lot of policy in this speech. I want to elevate it to a point where we're having a proper discussion about who are we as a country, what do we believe in, and how do we make sure that we go forward as one country together, united, and not slip into the division, which I fear will be the choice of the next election.
You mentioned a fork in the road. One fork, I suppose, is the Tories and Labour, and the other fork is Reform. So would you be willing to sleep under a Tory government, but not a Reform government, if you see?
I think a lot of people would say, and I would say, I vote Labour, I want a Labour government. Obviously, I'm a Labour Prime Minister. But if there's a Conservative government, there isn't the level of fear that there is if we go for a more right-wing proposition. And in recent weeks and months, there's been a huge amount of incoming to me by people across the country who are fearful that they don't belong in this country. They thought they were part of the Britain we were proud of, and now they feel they don't belong. That is not a good thing for our tolerant, diverse country.
You mentioned small boats. I think that's when you think that's how you'll be judged. You want to stop those boats. Shabana Mahmood's making new steps there. You know, at the weekend, a big boat came in, 125 arrived, maybe 5 have gone back under the 1 in and one out deal. When will that start getting going? Will you stop the boats by the election?
Well, the returns agreement with France is important because we need to establish that if you come by boat, you will be returned to France. I accept the numbers are low. We had to prove the concept and prove that it could work. We've now done that, but now we need to ramp that up. I would gently point out to Nigel Farage and others that before we left the EU, we had a returns agreement with every country in the EU, and he told the country, make no difference if we left. Well, he was wrong about that. These are Farage boats in many senses that are coming across the channel. And
legal net migration, that will come down to under your government.
Yes, if you look at, well, we got the Boris wave, didn't we? Yeah. Immigration went up fourfold under the Conservatives in 5 short years. It's unbelievable. And we are bringing it down. You've seen those numbers coming down. Of course, it's right to say that many people come here to contribute to our society, but the numbers need to come down, and we're bringing them down.
Just a very final question. You aren't doing very well in the polls personally. You've seen those polls. Would you stand aside in the national interest if the next person who came in could beat Nigel Farage and lift the poll rating for Labour?
We had an election last July. Yeah. I led my party to a landslide victory. And I never pretended and never said that we could undo 14 years of failure in 12 short months. It was always going to take longer than that. I will lead my party into the next election, and I will be judged at that election on whether living standards have gone up, people feel better off, whether public services are better, particularly the NHS, and whether people feel more safe and secure in their neighbourhood and in their country. Rightly judged against those tests when it gets to the next election.
So, Keir Starmer, thank you for joining us on GB News, and I'll give you a GB News flag later.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Using the internet without a VPN, a virtual private network, is a bit like taking to the road without car insurance. All it takes is one unlucky moment to cost you a lot of cash. This video's sponsor is Private Internet Access. They are the VPN to help keep you safe. Click the link in the description below to find out why over 30 million people have downloaded PIA to protect themselves online. A virtual private network is an app that hides your IP address and helps keep your data private. When you're browsing the internet at home, you give up a large amount of data to businesses, to shops, and indeed to social media giants too. Hackers have the ability to steal your personal data with ease, including sensitive information such as passwords, keystrokes, and even your personal photos. Private Internet Access helps protect your personal data by encrypting your internet connection to keep your data out of the hands of cyber criminals. And it's not just hackers either to be concerned about. Information can be censored too. When Canada passed their C-18 bill, social media giants decided to ban news content on their platforms. But PIA can protect your ability to consume the news and content you love. Private Internet Access is available for Windows users, Mac OS, Android, Linux, iOS, and you can use one PIA subscription to protect an unlimited amount of devices. And we've got a huge GB News discount for you too. Click the link in this video's description and you'll get a massive 83% off PIA. That's under £2 a month, the price of a coffee, and you'll get an extra 4 months completely free on top. Also, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee too. Visit piavpn.com/GB News to start protecting yourself digitally today.
OK, so that's the Prime Minister having his say. How did Nigel Farage respond? Let's have a listen.
Level of obsession, speech after speech from every single cabinet minister. I promise you, quite unlike anything I've ever seen or heard in my entire lifetime of following politics. Now, on to content. I think that what the Prime Minister did today was insightful, genuinely insightful. I think he descended into the gutter. I think he took the rest of his cabinet with him.
Well, the Labour MP Natalie Fleet, however, said that she hopes and heard hope in the Prime Minister's speech.
I didn't hear that. I heard hope. Honestly, we were talking about our vision for the country and how different things are going to be. In communities like mine, we've got 1 in 4 primary schools don't even have a library. That's ridiculous. When kids grow up in poverty, they haven't got access to books, they're not going to do as well. They need a government that can absolutely deliver for them, make life easier and make sure that the state can wrap their arms around them.
Well, I heard hope in the speech as well. I agree with Natalie. Let's hear political commentator Andy Williams. The hope I heard, Andy, was no hope. Basically,
I think that's a bit unfair, Eamon. I think it was.
Are you serious? Are you serious?
Yeah.
I mean, I got a man here who I thought gave a really good performance in the Prime Minister yesterday.
I agree.
I thought best performance that I've seen him conduct on stage. He was right with that. He was wrong with his message. He's so out of tune with what people are thinking.
Well, I think we need to separate two things, right? So, will this speech, in the scheme of things, shift the dial in a meaningful way? No. We know that Keir Starmer is really unpopular. Like historically unpopular. We know that the government as a whole is pretty unpopular. 12% approval of their record so far. The only way we're going to change things, and the only way that you can actually tackle the threat of reform, is by delivering on all of the stuff that Labour promised, 18 months ago. So it's not going to shift the dial in itself, but I thought it was an impassioned speech. I thought it was articulate. I thought Starmer was really clear about the genuine differences between what Labour and reform would offer. 20 years ago, people would say politicians are all the same, there's no difference between Labour and the Tories. We're not there anymore. There are huge differences between what Labour would offer and what reform would offer. And I think for the first time, Starmer's found a very clear dividing line between Labour and reform, which is that Labour stands for a more tolerant, more patriotic country, and reform, I totally agree with this line, the politics of grievance. That is what Farage is selling.
Was he right, though, to use this speech to focus on Nigel Farage and Reform UK? I mean, it was light on policy, barely anything on themselves and barely anything on the Tories.
I think on the Tories, I think they've made themselves an irrelevance. So I think that's the right approach, just to ignore them. I would have taken a slightly different approach, and rather than completely focused on Nigel Farage, I would have talked about the practical things that Labour is looking to do. Now, people can agree or disagree with those things, but I would have been a bit more detailed on the policy side of things, and I would have said, look, we're 4 years out from a general election, or just under 4 years out from a general election, so we can talk about the polls all we like, but a lot can change. That's a long time away. When we have the next general election, Donald Trump won't be in the White House. It'll be a different world. And so Labour has a huge majority, and he has time, but they've got to get things done, and they've got to start performing better.
One of the things they've got to get done, Andy, is to change their leader. People may be sympathetic to what Labour stand for, but they're not sympathetic towards Starmer. I'm telling you this, my friend, unless I live in a completely void world from everyone else, people don't believe in Keir Starmer. They don't like Keir Starmer. He's had his chance and he's missed it.
So I don't disagree with that, and I said to you off air, and I'm very happy to say on air that he's very unpopular for a reason. I don't think he's had a good start to his time as Prime Minister. I don't think anybody would say that, but there is time for him to turn it around. The public change their minds pretty easily. I know because I hear it I was up in Liverpool for the last few days, and I hear it from people in the conference, normal people outside the conference, because let's be honest, party conferences are kind of weird bubbles of people who are obsessed with it. It is a Westminster bubble thing. But you hear it from people everywhere that they just do not, as you said, do not believe in Keir Starmer. But that doesn't mean they won't change their minds. And, yeah.
Can I ask you about something else at Labour conference, which is concerning? 4 people so far that we know of have been banned from conference. They've received letters saying that there's concerns around safeguarding. Now, these are 4 people, but including Labour activists and Labour members. It's been described as a Trumpian crackdown. What do you make of this?
I completely agree with you. I think the Labour Party's really let itself down there. You cannot win arguments, and what Starmer's trying to do, on paper at least, is win an argument about where the country should be going. You can't do that if you ban people who you happen to disagree with from attending your conference. Now, as I understand it, the letters that people like Matthew Talbot, who's often on this channel, and Owen Jones received, said there's been a safeguarding issue. That's not true. The party just doesn't agree with what they have to say, and I think it's completely the wrong approach.
And they're critical of party policy.
They're critical of party policy, but they should absolutely be allowing people who are critical of party policy to come in and to have that open debate. And, I've been very critical of the way that Trump has behaved in America, where on the one hand he says, we stand for freedom of speech, ultimate freedom of speech. But then every time somebody says something they disagree with, they shut it down. And Starmer has been accused of having a kind of authoritarian grip on the Labour Party, and this just plays into the hands of people who say that.
The big accusation from Nigel Farage is, you know, he'll take a lot of things on the chin, but there's no doubt that he believes that what Labour are saying and what the Prime Minister said yesterday incites violence against reform candidates. What do you think?
I don't agree with that. And I think Farage has a habit of being quite thin-skinned.
Do you think, when you've got the whole front bench talking about racism, and we've heard it from the Home Secretary, heard it from the Health Secretary, heard it from the Education Secretary,
and the Prime Minister,
that then David Lammy yesterday talking about Nazi youth, having to retract and come down from that. But if we've got all of that from the front bench, you don't think that that's insightful?
No, but I do. But I'm also not saying it's correct. So Lammy talking about the Hitler Youth was just a really, really stupid thing to say. David Lammy has a habit of saying the first thing that comes into his head without thinking about the implications. And I bet Number 10 had their head in their hands after he said that, because he clearly got a phone call saying, you row this back right now. I mean, how stupid. Saying anything, going down the route of Nazis and Hitler and extreme right, it just is really silly. Again, I think it's about taking on the argument and winning it on its own terms rather than using this kind of inflammatory language.
Thank you for your language this morning. Thank you for your analysis, Andy. Thank you.